Leanne, we want to thank you for coming today. Yes, to interview with us. You're gonna interview for our 5th grade position that we have open. I want to introduce our 4th grade teacher. This is Mrs. Brooks. It's nice to meet you too. And our special education teacher is Mrs. Montgomery. Hi, Mrs. Montgomery. Nice to meet you. They're going to help me with the interview. Okay. So I always like to get started by you just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'll be glad to. My name is Leanne, and I grew up in a small town very similar to Memphis, and always knew I wanted to be a teacher, and that was kind of a given to me. I went to school at West Texas A&M, graduated in 3.5 years, so I could get my teaching degree, and actually planned to find a husband at WT. That's why I went. Getting my teaching degree was just kind of a given. But while I was there, I did not meet the man of my dreams like I thought I was going to. Instead, he ended up back home in my small town where I was from. So that was kind of neat. I met him. He was a highway patrolman, and so we started dating. And I graduated in December, and we got married in January. So pretty fast after I graduated. And then I've taught a few years, and he recently was reassigned to this area. And so I'm looking for maybe getting on with 5th grade job. We have one son, and he's 26 and graduated from Texas A&M and works for a nonprofit organization in that area.
Awesome. Okay. All right.
So I think you may have just answered this a little bit, but just in case you want to elaborate on it a little bit. What encouraged you to seek employment at Memphis ISD?
Well, I did. My husband was reassigned to this area. And so I just kind of started looking for what might be available around here. And I saw your ad, your posting on the school's website and through Region 16 as well. And did some looking and kind of thought that this might be a good fit, I hope. And I would like to come and work here.
Okay, you made the comment that getting your teaching certificate was a given. Tell us how you knew that it was a given. Why did you choose to become a teacher?
Well, I was that little girl that lined up her stuffed animals and gave them spelling tests. And, poor little Sally baby over here missed every word, and this one might get 3 words right, and this one might get all the words right. And that meant I was running back and forth and writing for them. What's such a goober? And then graded all those papers. Little did I know years later, that was not so fun to grade 900 spelling tests. But I just always wanted to be a teacher. My mother had a book that was it was like a Dr. Seuss book that you filled out about yourself as you were growing up. And it was all about me. I did it when I was 6 years old. And the very last page was, when I grow up, I want to be. And not spelled correctly was teacher. But I love kids. I babysat when I was in junior high. Started helping teacher friends that were friends of my mother's, friends of our families who were teachers. I would go and work in their classrooms and do stuff for them. And it's just,
It was in your blood.
all I ever wanted, truly all I ever wanted to be, and all I could ever see myself doing.
So you must have enjoyed school as well.
I guess I did. I can look back. I was not good at spelling. I've mentioned that already a couple of times. Really struggled with spelling, and really struggled with like learning my math facts, for some odd reason. And I was in that fact-driven world where you had to know them like this. And man, I struggled with that as well. When I say struggled, I did well.
Sure.
I was in the top of my class when I graduated. But I had really good teachers. One of my favorite teachers was my 2nd grade teacher. And the only thing I can really remember about her class is that we never wore shoes. We took our shoes off at the door, and we never wore our shoes. But I think it was very comfortable and it was very safe. And that's what I remember most about her. One of my high school teachers was very young, and so we related to her real well. And she was actually like business typing teacher, you know, and she let me, I was her assistant and did a lot of things in her room. But I think the relationship that she tried to build with all of us, that was a safe place too. I did enjoy school.
Yes. Otherwise, I feel like you may have changed your mind
Yeah.
about whether you wanted to do it or not. But okay, well, what are the most important qualities to model for your students?
Well, my kids are gonna know that I love them. You know, and
that safe place kind of that you've already
yes,
mentioned. a little bit.
definitely. I want it to be safe, and I'm gonna model that love and respect. I think that's really important. So many of our children don't see good examples of respect, and so I think that's important for us to model for them. They're going to see me model being responsible and being dependable. When I say something, that's the way it's gonna be. I'm gonna do it. Now, I'm not to say I'm not gonna be flexible. I think that's another quality that needs to be modeled for students. I may have a plan that I want it to go this way, but I'm gonna be flexible enough to follow their lead if something needs to change. I think what other quality? Hardworking. You know, I want that to instill that work ethic in my students. I want them to understand it's not always going to be easy, and you're going to have to stick it out and work hard and push through those tough times.
Absolutely.
So when you were talking about your experiences in school, you talked about getting to take your shoes off and the relationship the high school teacher built with you. How do you create a classroom culture that supports learning of every student?
Well, I really believe in routines, because I think if you don't have routines and everything is topsy-turvy, kids don't know what to expect, and it makes it not feel safe.
Right.
And so my classroom is very structured. I am very routine driven. I can go with the flow when things need to change. I can handle that. But I think because we have those routines in place, then we can be flexible when we have to be. Right. I want to have fun. Yeah. You know, I want my kids to enjoy being at school, and I want them to laugh, and I want them to feel safe, and I want it to be a good place for them. So I'm definitely going to use that. I'm tough. You know, I have high expectations, and I want my kids to meet those expectations. And when they don't, you know, we're going to have a conversation about it.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm going to help them know how to fix it so that they can be successful the next time. Right. Did I answer that question?
Yes.
I kind of rattled. Sorry.
You did.
No, and I'm going to piggyback off that just a
Okay.
minute before. I was just going to mention that, you know, we have several kiddos in our school district, several of our students whose home lives may not be as structured or as safe sometimes as we would like, or as our lives might be. And so those routines and expectations are really critical for them, and for them to know what is expected every day, because that this may be the only place where those routines and expectations are very clear. So that's important for us.
I had a superintendent one time that was very much a neat freak. He wanted everything, you know, not 10 piles on your desk. You know, he wanted things, and I'm not always that way. You know, sometimes the chaos is a little cluttered. But I also know that in some of Ruby Payne, Dr. Ruby Payne's work, she's talked about how so many of our children of poverty, their lives are so chaotic that they can't file things away in their mind where they need to be, because things are in such chaos. And so it's important for us to model that organization, to teach them organization, and then to have our classrooms safe and clean. You know, I had in that classroom when I had that superintendent, I had bookshelves across the back of the whole back end of my classroom was bookshelves. And sometimes it was pretty messy. And unfortunately, when you walked in the door, that was the first thing you saw. And so after we learned that from Ruby Payne, I hung some curtains up. And so it might still be messy behind, but at least the curtains made it look neater.
Right.
And it made it feel that way, more organized for the kids. Right. I like to do desk checks, and the kids, I take a picture of what I wanted their desks to look like. And we would model that and work through that, and, you know, teach them how to file their papers. And inside their desk and how their books needed to look. And then the desk fairy would come around, check their desk, and if they were neat like they needed to be, they got a little note left on their desk. And when they collected 5 of those notes, they got to trade them in for a prize. And so that was kind of a fun thing we did where I was teaching them that organization, but giving them a reward. Yes, very much a skill that has to be
Yes.
taught.
Yes. Sorry, Annette.
So, that's
Threw it
okay.
in there.
So in your experiences and resources, what all are you gonna be bringing in training lessons? And what are you gonna have?
What resources am I going to bring? Well, I have
Experiences.
and experiences. I taught 3rd grade. I've taught 3rd grade for about 10 years. Not about 10 years, 10 years. And I also taught 4th grade. And so this will be my first time to teach 5th grade. But I feel like, 5th grade, there's a big step up there, but I have taught 4th. So content wise, I think I'm fine. I'm not too worried about that. As far as bringing resources, I'll use my textbooks. What textbook option do you guys have? Pearson. Okay, that's what we had at my other school too. So I'm familiar with that. That's a good thing. I think I would use my textbooks, but I'm also, and maybe this isn't a good thing to say, is I'm not so tied to the textbook that if it's not the best lesson, I'm not afraid to pull something else out of my bag of tricks to teach it maybe in a different way. Or it might be the best lesson ever and the kids just aren't getting it. And so I think that experience of knowing I can't just do it one way and expect, a cookie cutter lesson that everybody's going to get it. So I'm not afraid to find other resources. In that, I also know that if I'm trying to spend all of my time digging through other resources, then I'm wasting my time. So I'm not just going to willy-nilly go out and look for other stuff.
And also, with the special ed kids, do you differentiate?
Yes.
For every child's level?
Yes, I really try, and I'm not sure how you guys do it, but if I'm assuming I would have like a list of accommodations for the students, so I would know that in planning those lessons. And, maybe I can give you an example of the differentiation I did. When I was teaching 3rd grade, we did time tests for math class. And, you change as a teacher after you become a mom. I don't know if you guys are moms or not, but I changed some of the things that I expected as my son grew up. When I first was teaching, by George, if you didn't know those facts and you couldn't get that math minute done in 30 seconds or a minute or whatever, you didn't know your facts. And my own kid, who is very bright, which we learned later on has some dysgraphia, he would know his facts, but when it came time for the timer to be going, he couldn't get it on paper. And so it might be, timer's going and it's 3 times 0 and he's going 3 times 0, 3 times 0, 3 times 0, 2 times 2, 2 times 2, 2 times 2. And I'm like, you know those. How can you not get those? But it was that timer pressure. So one accommodation I made, not really an accommodation, maybe a more of a modification to my expectations, was we still did our Mad Minutes, but one week we did Mad Minutes and took a grade on a Mad Minute, the best one of the week. And then the next week they would come to my desk and I would flash cards to them. And not necessarily, I wouldn't give them all the time in the world, but it wasn't that timer going on.
Right.
And then they, 10 facts and they got, or 20 facts and how many they got right was a grade. So I kind of did that. In that Mad Minute also, we did, if you were needed challenging more so, then I set a challenge of like 30 seconds or 45 seconds. And then everybody had the minute, but if you needed a little extra, you got maybe a minute and a half. And they were just groups A, B, and C. So everybody took it at the same time. I passed out the Mad Minute. Maybe they didn't all look alike. Some of them might have shortened. And then when the timer started at 45 seconds, I would say group A, you may stop. At a minute, group B, you can stop. Group C at a minute and a half. And then we graded it or checked it. And then it was stand up if you got more today right than you got yesterday. So try
Against
not,
yourself.
yes,
Yeah,
against
right.
yourself.
Yeah.
Not necessarily who got the most out of the whole class.
Right.
But yesterday I got 12, today I got 13, so I get to stand up.
Mhm.
So maybe that was kind of an example of
Very good,
differentiation.
very good.
I think it's very, very important to differentiate.
So my turn. I've lost track, y'all. Okay.
That's good, Nick.
Okay. How do you collaborate with fellow teachers? And how do you feel about that?
Oh, I feel it's very important.
Okay.
So at your school, tell me, like, there's 2 sections, 3 sections of fifth
Well,
grade?
the 4th and the 5th grade gets a little complicated.
Okay,
I mean, it really isn't complicated, but it's not as cut and dry as just being departmentalized or self-contained. At the moment, we have a 4th grade teacher who is teaching all 4th and 5th grade math.
okay,
And then we have a 4th grade ELAR and a 5th grade ELAR. And then we have science. So it gets,
4th
and
and 5th
they,
grade science?
yes,
Okay.
yes, and they
I can see
rotate
that, yeah.
around. Okay, so, so specifically, I'm thinking, of course, I'm not sure how all this is gonna fall out
Right.
and pan out, but I'm thinking it will be a 5th grade ELAR
okay.
position, but like I said, I can't say 100% black and white at the moment, but so there will be a co-5th grade teacher,
Mhm.
one other 5th grade teacher, as far as like you would have a 5th grade homeroom, that person has a 5th grade homeroom, but you also are going to have to be working with the other 4th
Fourth
grade
grade as well.
teachers as well.
So thinking about collaboration, well, first I want to say the examples I've given of math, but I am, in case it is an ELAR, that I can do that as well.
Okay,
I was 3rd grade self-contained and 4th grade self-contained.
okay,
3 tests.
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm good with ELAR in 5th grade. That's great. Or math, or whatever. I even taught science. So yeah. So collaboration. Back to the question. I think collaboration is very important. I'm hoping that so 5th grade sections would have the 2 teachers would have this common planning period.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
yes.
So even though we wouldn't be teaching the same things, I would like to see us be able to meet maybe like once a week at the minimum, maybe twice a week, not necessarily for the whole conference period, but to go in and touch base with each other as we
Mhm.
share students.
Exactly.
So we want to be talking about our students, talking about anything special that's going on that week. I don't know if you guys do dress up days or, any of that kind of special stuff, field trips, any of that we need to know about. And then to touch base on planning. We're just heads up that you said the other 5th grade homeroom is science.
Mhm.
Okay, so if we're working on something specific in our ELAR in 5th grade, let's say we're working on summarizing, then I can let the science teacher know that we're working on summarizing, and then maybe he could bring that into his science lesson, or she could bring that into her science lesson some way.
Mhm.
So I think that's important too. He can tell me, if they're working on life cycles or something like that, then maybe I can find some kind of reading passages or something that would go along with that.
Yes.
So I want those a little bit of cross curricular as much as you can,
Yes.
And still hit those. Reading, man, you can do cross curricular with lots of things. in
Exactly.
reading.
And I would say our kiddos struggle the most with those nonfiction
Oh.
text features.
Yeah, find me kids that don't.
So yes, so it would be good to work together on that. Not only is it going to help him on the science test, but it's going to help you help the kiddos as well. You
Yes,
know what
ma'am.
I'm saying?
And then I would like to find some time to be able to touch base with those 4th grade teachers as well. And the ones that, I think you said one of them would be doing math. So
Right.
he or she would have my students as well.
Exactly.
So, and I think, talking data, talking just all that kind of stuff, we need that collaboration. When I taught 3rd grade, which it was self-contained, and 4th grade was self-contained as well, but especially in 3rd grade, we met, twice a week at plants together. And we talked about everything, knew what each other was doing. I could step into that teacher's room if she needed me to. She would step into my room if I needed her to. We could almost finish each other's sentences.
Right.
Our teaching styles were very similar. And I know sometimes it's not that way, and you have to work around that if it's not. And I'm willing to do that as well, but I think collaboration is critical.
So how do you encourage active participation in the classroom?
Well, I'm not a sit and get kind of teacher. My kids are gonna be up and going. I do stations, even with my fourth graders, we do literacy stations, rotated through. I worked with a small group. They had stations that they were working on in ELAR. In math, we did some of that as well. I did lots of games, lots of activities. You might see my kids on the floor doing stuff. It might look a little chaotic, but it's active engagement for us.
How do you handle the discipline in your classroom, or how do you think it should be handled in school?
Okay. So thinking about my classroom first. Well, first, let me ask you guys, maybe if you don't mind, and if you want me to tell first, I can. But do you have like a school-wide discipline system? Or
We have, we're first grade through fifth grade. And so first and second grade kind of have the same classroom management or discipline plan. And then third, fourth, and fifth have a very similar kind of plan where, it's based on the check system. So I'll tell you, since you won't be a first or second grade teacher, so there's a check mark kind of system, and that's school wide. Okay, one check needs this, two checks needs this, and so on.
so the consistency is there.
Yes.
I really think that's important. I have used, and I'd be glad to use checks, whatever you guys use. I had a little card, called it a conduct card. And it was about this big or so, and it had a place where I punched a hole in it. And so like the first time they got in trouble was warning, and it just said warning on there. And then the second time was whatever the second consequence was at our school, and we did do time off recess. I know some schools have moved away from that, but that was something that we did. And then third consequence was at the last school we had was a lunch detention type situation, detention, lunch detention, after school detention, whatever. And then a fourth check was trip to the principal's office, or a fourth hold there. Right. And so on Monday, every student got their conduct card for the week, and it was their responsibility to keep up with their conduct card. And so that was something big at the beginning of the year. And I did this even with my third graders, and I taught them to put it in their school box or put it in their planner, put it somewhere safe. We left them at school for the week. We did not take them home. And I, of course, would give verbal warnings, whatever they needed. And then when it got to the point that I was going to punch their conduct card, that they had to bring me their card, I punched a hole in it. We had a conversation privately about whatever the situation was. And then a conversation about how to fix it. And so we talked about, this is what happened this time. What can you do different? Or I see that you're having trouble with this. And then they took their conduct card back to their desk and kept up with it. On Friday, that conduct card got stapled to their weekly papers to go home for the parent. And that way the parent was able to see the conduct card and see what had happened with it. I am not afraid to call parents. I want to call parents for good things, but I also, know that sometimes we've got to call them to let them know what's going on, because that kid is not going to tell them why they got their card punched. Oh, I didn't mention that, but I always wrote on the back.
Oh, wow.
So why they got it
That's
punched.
good. So
Yes,
you
I kind of
wouldn't
skipped
forget.
that. Yes, and so that parent would know. And then I had a checklist that I had. It had all of the students' names down the side, and then kind of the most common things you give out checks for, talking, out of your seat, those kind of things. Forgot their homework, or I try to not do too many like that.
Yeah.
And
Just not following directions.
not following directions, those kind of things. I had some of those, and then I had blanks where I could write my own stuff on there. But I could put a check on that, and I had a page for the week, so that then when I met with that parent, and the parent saying, my kid's always getting in trouble. Their conduct card, you're picking on my kid. It's always getting in trouble. Their conduct card is always punched. We could look back and say, well, this week they didn't have any punches. This week they got one punch. This week was kind of a tough week. We had two, but they were back to none. And so that was nice documentation. Or the other side, consistently this kiddo is not doing this, or this. So that was a good record keeping for me. I couldn't remember from one week to the next who did what.
Sure.
And if on Friday they did not have any punches on their card and they had kept up with their conduct card, that was the other piece of it, which really wasn't much of an issue after we first, after
Right.
they got them
After they
trained.
realized.
Yeah. And they got a Friday treat.
Okay.
And so that was something I bought myself. I didn't have a classroom budget for it, but it might be, this is maybe not the right thing to say in an interview. I just realized I
Things
was
of
going
non-nutritional value.
some foods of minimal nutritional value. Yeah, but my principal was really good about do what you got to do for the kids. And so we might have ice cream sandwiches, or they might get stickers, and it wasn't big elaborate things, but it meant the world to those kids. And those weeks when a lot of people got their cards punched, the prizes were a little bigger.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
And then when we celebrated, if it was a week that nobody got their card punched, we did something big. But I wanted them to be rewarded for that. I know we kind of started out on discipline, but I think that's a big piece of it.
It's part of it.
Yeah. We work for a paycheck. Now I love what I do, but that my reward, besides the reward in here, but is my paycheck. And so for my kids, that Friday treat, that not having any holes in their conduct card was their reward. And so I'm not opposed to.
Well, how do you feel about sending kids to the principal?
Well, and then, you mentioned school-wide, so that's kind of my classroom thing that I did. And then school-wide, there are things that have to go to the principal. I try to handle it myself, but I'm not afraid to take a kiddo down and have a conversation with the principal. I would want to come to you and I'm not that one that is sending them because they've lost their pencil or sending them because they asked to go to the bathroom too many times or, whatever. So, I would want you to be able to trust me that when I'm bringing a kid to you, it's moved to that level. And it's not just for any little thing.
Right.
And then, honestly, you are the principal. And so what you choose to do with them is up to you. And where it goes from there, that's up to you. But I'm not afraid to take a kiddo to the office, but that's not my first choice either.
Okay. Good. I have no idea whose turn it is.
Either way, I can go,
Okay.
or we can give an example of how you can adapt the lesson for groups of students with a variety of abilities.
Okay. An example of how I would, could you repeat that question?
Yes, give examples of how you adapt lessons for groups of students with a variety of abilities.
Okay.
Like a
I think you
differentiating.
kind of did that already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can
Yeah.
give another example. No,
Okay.
that's fine. I did give I think kind of alluded to that with the math fact
Yes,
thing.
yes, you did.
But I really, and I don't know if your school does balanced literacy or guided reading or anything like that, but in fifth grade ELAR, I would like to do like literature circles.
Okay.
That would be something you and I could visit about more if I were to get the position. But in literature circles, you choose different levels of books as like you would for a guided reading lesson. And so you can really differentiate that, what you're teaching from that book to that level of kids. And so I've done them actually. I've done some literature circles with my higher level students, and it was really cool to be able to take a book. I've done it two ways. One, I took the same book and did different activities with each group with it. That one to me wasn't quite as successful because I could change what I was teaching, but the activity, this group, they were all reading the same book. So,
Right.
well, why didn't we get to make that whatever? They didn't really understand it. So then I think when it was most beneficial was we had different levels of books,
Okay.
different books.
Right.
And they were responsible, like in guided reading, they might come to you and read that section while they're at the table with you.
Right.
In a literature circle, and I'm telling you this, you guys probably already know all this, but in a literature circle, I might assign them to read chapters 1 and 2 on their own and be ready when they come to the circle to discuss it.
Right.
And I could give them a purpose for reading.
Okay.
So that when they knew, okay, so they're going to read these chapters, but then when they come to the table, be ready to discuss this part of it or something like that. So I think that's one way you could differentiate what you're teaching, even with 5th grade, in ELAR.
Right.
Is that
Yes,
a good
yes,
example? Okay.
yes, for sure.
So would you tell them, when you're making those assignments, I want you to look for cause and effect while you're reading, or I want you to look for what the theme of it,
Yeah.
is that what you would
Yes, ma'am.
assign? as your-
Something,
okay,
something kind of
along
like
those
that.
lines
uh-huh.
or something?
I've
Okay.
also, one of my favorite things to do was we had a sticky note, and everybody had a sticky note. I use a lot of sticky notes. Sorry, if I get the job, I'm gonna have to have sticky note allotment. But everybody had a sticky note, and I teach them this little system that you have. A heart is like a part you love. An exclamation mark is a part of that really like surprised you or shocked you or like got to you,
Mhm.
A question mark maybe was either a something you didn't understand, or you're wondering why the author put that in there. Something that leaves you wondering.
Or even words you don't know?
NW
okay.
was a new word.
Oh, okay.
We put NW for a new word, and a star. Did I already say a star?
Mhm.
Okay, a star by maybe a part that you just you got to go back to.
Right.
And so maybe that all I want them to do is read these 2 chapters and fill out their sticky note. And they didn't have to do all of those, but they had to have something marked in their book. And then that is like great when they bring those and they, I want to talk about this part. Oh, this part really got to me. And everybody flips to that. And, that one student reads that section out loud. And then we talk about, well, why did it make you feel that way? Or why would the author mention this? Do you think it's going to come up later? Or why is it kind of random that they threw that in there? And that's really cool. Sorry, I think I just stepped
No,
on your toe.
you're good. You're good.
And since you've had several years of teaching experience, you've seen how parental involvement has changed.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell what some of the methods you would use to communicate with parents and how you would encourage parents to be more involved with their students.
Well, I wished I had a magic bullet for that because I think, I don't know how things are for you guys here in Memphis, but I think just across the nation, across our country, and especially across this part of Texas, our parental involvement is just not what it has been, what it needs to be. When I look back at when I started teaching to where it is now, it's changed a lot. When I think about how it was when I was growing up to now. So I'm going to be proactive. I don't think you need to wait until there's a problem to contact parents, because when you do, little Johnny's going to go home and, if something happened at school, like I had a kiddo that, say got a scratch on their face, an innocent type thing, maybe in PE or on the playground, there were 2 kids going for the ball and got a scratch. And so if I can call that parent first and say, hey, when you pick up little Johnny today, you're going to say he's got a scratch on his face. I just wanted to give you a heads up as to what happened. And then I can tell maybe what really happened. And not saying that the kid is not going to be honest, but when your kid gets in the car and you go, what happened to your face?
Right.
And you go, oh, well, Billy scratched me on the playground.
Right.
Well, yeah, that is what happened. But when you get to the whole story, they were both going for the ball, or he just accidentally got him. And, we apologized, we addressed it, we had it cleaned by the school nurse. We took care of it. If I can call the parent and tell them those things, I think that's going to help a lot. And I want parents to come to my classroom. I don't know what your policy is on like visitors, but especially if I'm having a problem with a kid, it doesn't always work out right. I've had it where I invited a parent to come, and the parent was more of a distraction trying to get onto the kid, and so that didn't really help. So I don't know that is always helpful, but I don't want the parents to think that, what I'm doing in the classroom is a secret and that they're not a part of it.
Mhm.
I want them to be a part of it. I'm going to do, I've always done a newsletter that I send home once a month and kind of tell them, what we're working on. I tried once a week. Yeah. A little overwhelming to do once a week, but if that's your expectation, I'll do once a week. But once a month was pretty good, just to let them know kind of what all was going on in my classroom, what we were learning, what they could expect, important things maybe coming up around the school that would know about. As I mentioned, their conduct card went home each week with their papers. I thought that was important for the parent. You guys have school parties,
Yes.
so trying to get parents to come up and help with school parties, those kind of things. One other thing that I did one year, and I thought this was really kind of neat, but I allowed I picked a kiddo or two on Friday, and we would just call. We didn't always do it on Friday. Sometimes it was if something good happened, like maybe they didn't get any punches that day, or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Then we might go call mom and just say, "I'm having a really good day." Or on Friday, I might call and just say, "I want you to know that." I keep saying little Johnny, poor Johnny. Little Johnny's worked really hard this week, and I could tell he had his homework every day, and he was very attentive in class, and I appreciate what you've done to help him be successful. And those positive phone calls were a big deal too.
So not everything was negative.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want everything. I don't want every time they hear from me to be negative. I want it to be positive as well. Because then maybe we have that relationship that when something does happen and I need them, that they'll back me up.
I think, we have binders and planners that go home every day.
Oh, great.
That is nice for that kind of communication, and it works well. But sometimes I think it's important for parents to actually hear. So I really like that you've said the phone calls, because we sure don't want, this goes into another thing I was going to say. I don't want staff communicating with parents with their own cell phones and text messages and things like that.
Thank you.
For your
Right.
safety.
Yes, I appreciate that.
So we don't want that, but at the same time, and most parents are perfectly happy with getting a note in their binder. I'm not trying to say that
Yeah.
they're not, but as parents, we all know how that feels when they do hear it, that, actually hear it either at the dismissal or with a phone call or something like that. So, but we do have daily communication in that binder and in that planner.
Great. I
That
think
we already have, so.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no.
In our society, we've lost that face to face.
Yes.
Because we do text so much.
Yes.
And email, and email is another way.
Yes.
And it's not as good as a phone call, but it is still maybe a little more personalized.
Yes,
I can email that parent.
absolutely.
It's kind of nice for those parents that maybe work nights or whatever. They can answer me on their free time, on
Mhm.
their time.
Right.
So that is another way. But I think you're right. If I'm not ever making that face-to-face contact, either with a phone call, it's not truly face-to-face, but it's at least a
more.
voice.
Yes,
Or you say a dismissal, like
sure.
going to the car.
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be, I think that's really important too. And I love your weekly planner. That's a great idea.
How do you integrate technology in the curriculum you teach?
Oh, that's a good question.
You technology guru. No. I think that technology plays a major role in our kids' learning. And we either have to get on board, or our kids are going to be behind when they leave us. And, at 5th grade, we need to be thinking about what do they need in junior high to be successful, and what do they need in high school to be successful, and then what do they need when they go to college. And it sounds kind of silly to be thinking as 5th graders, what do they need when they go to college, but we've got to put some of those things in play. But at the same time, technology can't replace good teaching. And so I think it's really important to find the balance there. I want to use technology. Our kids are in technology. They're immersed in it. Me standing there and telling them things about Antarctica is not nearly as powerful as them seeing pictures of it and being able to maybe take a virtual tour of Antarctica or some things like that. In the school that I came from, we had a very high level of low socioeconomic students. I did look at your demographics online, and I
Yes.
think, you
Yes.
guys seem to as well. I think that's a place where technology can kind of fill some of those gaps. Our kids don't have those same experiences.
Exactly.
We had a group of kids, we had a Dairy Queen in town, and we had a group of kiddos that had never been to the Dairy Queen in town. And so, we found a way one day to go to the Dairy Queen,
Mhm.
to order from the menu and, to get that experience. But back to the technology piece, I'm sorry, I bird walked there for a minute. I think that technology is important in that aspect, but I don't want my kids, go get on the computer and do program X for the next 60 minutes.
Mhm.
And I'm going to sit over here and grade papers, or I'm going to sit over here and do whatever. I need to be teaching them rather than, and let the computer supplement what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I really think keyboarding, I know that sounds crazy, but I think keyboarding is so important. And especially thinking about our students looking forward to online testing. And they've got to know that QWERTY key. My typing teacher was one of my favorite teachers in high school. And I did UIL typing, which is kind of a goofy thing. Now it's like so ancient UIL typing is telling how old I am. But our kids are going to have to type their essays and type their short answer questions. And if they're this, when they're used to texting like this, and you're trying to like this, that's going to slow down their processing of what they want to say. And so we've got to teach them keyboard skills. I think that's a big piece too.
And I like what you said about just not putting them on something and saying this, because even though they're immersed in technology, they don't always use it in an educational way.
That's right.
And so teaching them how to actually use the technology to research any part of it, understanding how to do that. I think sometimes they're used to using an application, so they're used to using Snapchat or FaceTiming with friends, but they're not really using that technology in an educational way. So I like what you said.
I agree. And I think even teaching our students like texting as almost a genre of writing is important, because what I text to you it's appropriate for that. I don't have to spell everything. I don't have to use capital letters. I don't have to use my punctuation. But when I go to write for my STAR test, or I'm writing a letter, or I'm filling out my resume for my application, by George, I better have punctuation everywhere, and I better have my words spelled correctly, not texting. Yeah. And so I think that's a piece too, is we've got to pull in that as its own little genre and what's appropriate.
I think it's you, ma'am. I'm gonna go with
But
you.
I can do it. Can you tell us about any other experiences that you have had working with special needs students? You
Okay.
told us a few, but is there anything else about working with special ed students that you?
Yes. So through the years, I've had kind of a variety of special needs students in my class. One year, probably one of my favorite years of teaching third grade, I had a student, a child with autism, and he was very low functioning. He was also intellectually disabled. He had an able from all the time. And so he wasn't able to be in my classroom for a lot of the academics, but anything we could do, we brought him in for everything else, all the socialization, everything else that we could do. Even when I was reading the classroom novel, then he came in and listened. I think that I loved that. I loved seeing the growth that he made. One of my favorite, if you'll allow me to tell another story, I tend to do that, I apologize. But at Halloween that year, we were carving pumpkins, and we were writing about them academically, about how to carve jack-o'-lantern. And so that was kind of the academic piece of it. And so for him, he came in with us when we were carving and stuck his hand, his very textures were a big deal for him. And so then he pulled his hand back out. and then he pulled his hand back out, and then he put his hand in there, and he had this look on his face, and then it was just this joy. I mean, just sheer joy. Both hands went in, and he was pulling the stuff out, and he was just, and the kids like clapped and cheered for him because it was such a big deal for him to get his hands on that. And so, did he write about that? No, but man, what an accomplishment that was for him. So I've had from pretty low functioning, high need, to slightly, I say slightly, I guess there's no slightly, but really just a little behind, maybe with a learning disability, but they're able to, you know, with some accommodations, very successful right where they are. Also, I had the opportunity when I was working at the daycare, when I mentioned when I was in junior high, I worked at the daycare in town, and we had some children there at the daycare that had special needs, and I got to work with them as well.
Okay, I think I'm gonna jump down and there's just one last thing. I'm just curious. I always like to end the interviews with this question, just to see, is there anything that you thought that I or we would ask that we didn't? Is there any question that you were expecting, like, every interview always asks this, or anything like that, that you thought we would ask, but we didn't ask?
You know, that you didn't ask me for my philosophy of education, and I'm kind of appreciative of that. that one gets asked a lot. You know, I really can't think of anything.
Yeah.
I think you guys ask a big variety of questions, and I know I rattled a lot, so I hope I didn't. I do apologize. I do tend to talk a lot, so.
We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you guys have anything else?
No.
Good.
No.
Okay.
Did you
It
have
was-
any-
no.
Did you have any questions?
I don't think so. I looked at most
Okay.
things on the
Online?
website, and
Great.
so I think I'm
Very
great.
nice.
Thank you. It's nice to meet y'all too.
And so I was like,
I stood up and I was short, so I was like, oh.
well, I was like, well, I feel like I'm almost too big for the table.
Well, a while ago, I crossed my
Giant
legs, and I
woman.
thought, well, it just looks like I have on a skirt. And my knees are hanging out. That's okay. I hope that was
Giant
okay.
woman.
I'm sorry.
You were fine. You were
Giant lady.
Well, y'all did a good job.